And Fancred, Cam Smith, our producer. I'm live in Los Angeles, still recovering from yesterday. That really was one of those things. If you've ever been like an athlete, I'm sure some of you out there have been, where you just have an unbelievable game. Something happens, right? And it's just an amazing experience. That show, man, that was unbelievable how well it worked, and that's because of Cam Smith, our producer, and Fancred. It's not because of me, that's for sure. But, we had 4 guests in a row, and everybody was on time perfectly. Pat McAfee was unbelievable. And, man, I was so by the way, we got Kevin Turner coming up. He's going to talk Cowboys, mybookie.ag. I'm going to give you a couple of picks, couple of thoughts on the NFL playoffs too, coming up. This is the when the home team wins weekend coming up. And so I do want to give you my picks. And I also want to talk about Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy and Stephen Jones, because they had an unbelievable press conference. You could just sit there and watch the whole thing. So we're going to look at that here in a second. Mike McCarthy had his press conference, and my God, was it unwittingly telling. They revealed everything that's going on, and they just confirmed, what we already knew. Of course we knew it. Why would we even think we didn't know that Mike basically is Jerry's valet, essentially? Jerry gets flat tire, McCarthy's out there. Holy. So in this press, we'll look at that in a second. We'll look at it in a second. But we've got Stephen Jones on camera, Jerry on camera, of course. It's not a one shot for Mike McCarthy. All 3 guys. There's so many things that are tells as to what exactly is going on. But, of course, Mike McCarthy unwittingly tells you everything, including, I might add, play calling. What do you know? He's not really sure, but he knows we've got a great staff. Right. We don't, Mike. The Cowboys do. Jerry and Steven do, with Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator. Well, I guess you're kind of we. So, for what it's worth, McCarthy had some things that really kind of confirmed, I think, what we were all thinking about. Has Mike really changed? Because the narrative is, boy, has Mike McCarthy changed. And of course, we went over this with Peter King. Oh, I forgot that I'm on CBS Sports, because I wanted to look at something here for a second online. And then whenever you go to cbssports.com, you probably don't. And that's not to say that they're not bad at CBS Sports. But, dude, when you have autoplay stuff, which CBS Sports is notorious for, forget it. All right, we're going to bring in Kevin Turner, and his Cowboys coverage is presented by mybookie.ag, where, of course, they'll double your deposit with the promo code FANCRED, FANCRED. Okay, I'm sorry. I saw the kind of capital letters. So that's my bad. All good. So we're going to have Kevin on here. I got a little excited. Kevin's a great guy. Great information. You want to make some money? This is the guy. mybookie.ag. That's coming up. And we're going to have a lot of Cowboys coverage today. It's going to be a pleasure. And I'm just making sure Cam has everything. So, Cam, we've got Cam Smith is, of course, our producer. And we've got some clips lined up of the Cowboys. Can't wait. Cowboys press conference. We also have, if we're able to get to it, and I don't know, did I send you the link? I need to send you the link of, I think I did, of the Joe Judge interview. Joe Judge, doesn't that kind of sound like Judge Mathis or Judge Judy? I'm thinking, is that daytime television? Whatever, Joe Judge. No, it's not. And believe me when I tell you, when you watch the interview, you'll know, in case you're wondering, it's not daytime television. It's serious business. So Yeah, I did send you the link to the Joe Judge thing. So maybe we'll run that and talk about it because it's very short, but it'll be fun. So now I jumped the gun, and Kevin Turner is ready. And so we welcome him in. His coverage of the Cowboys is brought to you by mybookie.ag, where they'll double your deposit with the promo code Fancred. And what's going on, man? How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to a big weekend of playoff football.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. And I've got some thoughts about it, but so this is supposed to be the weekend when all the home teams win, right? That's the thing. That's what people say, right?
Typically, unless you're the 2016 Dallas Cowboys, yes.
So, before we get to the games, God, I could not wait to ask you about Mike McCarthy. What's going on there? What do you think?
I'm very skeptical, and I'll be full disclosure. I study the Cowboys for a living, and I've covered the Cowboys for a living for 10 years, but I am a lifelong Packers fan. So I kind of have a pretty good idea of what McCarthy's all about. I didn't love the hiring because I did want the Cowboys to be bold. I wanted them to roll the dice and take a chance, and maybe let's find out if Lincoln Riley is a great head coach. I think Mike McCarthy is a good head coach. I think Mike McCarthy is very similar to Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett could have been in that category of good head coach. He just wasn't a good enough head coach on Sundays. There's a lot of things about Mike McCarthy that are going to remind you of Jason Garrett from a game management, in-game standpoint.
Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing?
I know it's not. It's a bad thing. Clock management, when to take timeouts, things like that. And, the thing that's interesting is about a month ago, maybe six weeks ago, Jason Garrett goes to the podium and talks about, well, we don't do in-game analytics here. Like, we focus on what we do, put our head down.
Dave Gettleman,
we're going to run the ball. The whole football jargon, it's kind of BS,
Right.
And then McCarthy has a puff piece on NFL Network saying that he's the analytics guy now. Opening day press conference.
You're kidding. Wait a minute. Hold up. Yeah. Now, have you looked up those clips? Can I steal that from you and not credit you?
Yeah,
because you've already done it. But you already. Oh, now I can steal it. If we do that, we might do that next week. Now, we should actually have you back on next week, and we'll get the thing rigged up. Maybe we could and we could do those clips. So you're saying that Jason Garrett at a press conference said, "I'm not an analytics guy," and that's the Pelissero interview you're talking about, right? Or the Peter King?
Yeah, the Pelissero and McCarthy. Right. Yeah,
he did a couple of them, and he went through the "Give Me a Job" car wash. And Peter King, yeoman's work for Mike McCarthy, I might add. We actually talked about that, Kevin, what was going on before McCarthy was hired. We were showing how it was basically a campaign by Peter King. And dude, I'm not criticizing anybody. That's all good. But and then McCarthy gets hired. But so you're saying that Jason Garrett, of course, Mike McCarthy at the time, looking for a job. Jason Garrett goes up on the podium, says, "I'm not an analytics guy." And of course, the insults rain down on social media and everywhere else about it.
Sure.
One more thing, right? And then there's an interview with Tom Pelissero, great reporter, and McCarthy, as McCarthy is now doing his tour to try to rehab his image to get a job. And it's right after Garrett's comments. And one of the themes of the interview is Mike McCarthy has changed. He's now an analytics guy.
Now, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't think McCarthy's interview was aimed at Garrett there.
Right.
By the way, McCarthy and Garrett are really good friends.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then that's me. I'm the cynic. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Brooks, pump the brakes, bro. I know you're excited about it, but that's Sports by Brooks. That's kind of in my blood. So when I heard that, I thought to myself, oh my God, that's amazing. But now that I think about it,
well, think about the two jobs that McCarthy interviewed for. Carolina openly said, we want a guy who will embrace analytics because Ron Rivera was not necessarily doing that. So McCarthy, more than anything, needed to get out in front of this, and it's genius work by his agent Trace Armstrong to set all that up. He needed to get out in front of it because his last 3 years in Green Bay featured an offense where, quite frankly, he is the play caller and offensive designer, could not scheme wide receivers open.
Right.
Like when you can't get guys
open.
High school
offense. Aaron Rodgers basically said it was a high school offense. It was anything I wanted it to be. It was a joke.
It got to be a joke. And it's one of those things where, like, hey, it works fine in 2010 and 2011 and things are good. It doesn't work fine in 2017, 2018 when the whole league is caught up with you. So he had to repair his image, and he did a good job of that. Now, what I would say is he's lied before, he'll lie again. In the opening press conference, a reporter asked,
"Dude, we're gonna run the clip. We have that clip set up, but go ahead and describe it. Go ahead and describe it."
Well, I was to say when he said that he'd seen every offensive play.
How about Steven Jones? By the way, we have to have. I love how it's so Cowboys that you don't get a one shot on the coach. The coach is having his introductory press conference. This is the big honeymoon time for every coach. So if he's ever going to get the attention and the one shot in his introductory press, no, Jerry's there the whole time, not just like sitting there. No, he's on camera the whole time, right? And yeah. Steven's there. And I'm not complaining because it's freaking awesome. It was great to see Steve and to hear him laugh. But did you, I was looking at that clip. We're going to run the clip. But Steven particularly had that kind of after a while, the cackle was a little uncomfortable. He's kind of around, but my sense though here in the situation, Kevin, is that this is just me, and you can slap me upside the head if I'm wrong, but Mike McCarthy is really a non-entity, and he all but confirmed it somewhat unwittingly in different situations in that introductory press conference. A happy to be here kind of a situation. I'm not saying it's a complete zero, but I think one of the big, and I want to ask you, how important do you think the Super Bowl ring was that McCarthy had won a Super Bowl before him getting this job? Because I think that's why he got the job.
That's huge. And I also think Aaron Rodgers comments like, hey, we've had a lot of good performances in Dallas. That Super Bowl, well, in Arlington,
right.
But, and all those playoff wins. And really, there's a few regular season wins that were huge. Really good Packers performances in that stadium. And, look, they had their eyes on McCarthy for a long time. That became quite clear very quickly into the process. I mean, only 2 official interviews. Now, look, maybe they got a text from Urban Meyer or Lincoln Riley on the back channels that said, look, I'm happy where I'm at right now. Don't create the buzz, move on. But the fact that they hired McCarthy so quickly after interviewing him tells you it's a little predetermined. They kind of had their eyes on the guy. And look, I am kind of 50-50. I'm 50-50 in that I'm cynical. I'm also 50-50 in that I do think people can evolve and people can change. It'll be interesting to see if he calls plays. Kellen Moore is kind of considering if he's going to stay or not.
Yeah.
I really think they're better off if they would just let Kellen Moore run the offense and leave him alone.
Right.
The Cowboys were never able to do that. They made leaps and bounds on offense this year. But when it got into crunch time in big games, you could tell that the game plan was compromised by Jason Garrett. And that's probably not realistic with McCarthy. McCarthy's going to get in there and have his hands on the offense. But has he talked about, let's talk about some crossing routes, some rub routes, things like that to scheme guys open? Because outside of Devontae Adams in those last couple years in Green Bay, they couldn't get a guy open because they weren't creating traffic offensively and being geometrical with the football field. And that got them beat, ultimately got him fired. I mean, him and Aaron, everyone's going to make a big deal about him and Aaron. Mike McCarthy has just as big of ego as Aaron Rodgers does. They both have big egos. Sure, that happens. But, Mike McCarthy is very stubborn, and you'll see that. But what's great for here in town, the reaction from everyone is like, oh, this is great because, opening press conference, he makes a joke or two. And it's already more jokes than Jason ever told. It's already more personality than Jason ever shown. And that was kind of the overarching message. It didn't matter who they hired to be the head coach as long as it was not Jason anymore.
Bingo.
been the trash man. It doesn't matter. It just couldn't be Jason anymore.
Right. But I think in general, by the way, I just thought of this, and it's kind of a Texas thing, because I think this was LBJ's in Robert Caro's big 3-part biography or 6-part biography of LBJ, famous author Robert Caro. He calls LBJ a professional son, right? Jason Garrett is a professional son. That's my impression from the outside. Was that an accurate assessment, or in the neighborhood with
Yes.
the Jones family?
Yes, because Jason, got that job, happy to have that job, and there were things that would frustrate Jason, no doubt, about some of the theatrics and that a lot of coaches might not put up with, and that Mike McCarthy may not put up with after 2 or 3 years. I think it's going to be a good honeymoon phase for 2 or 3 years. I truly do believe that, because A, Mike McCarthy's happy to have a job, much like Jason was. B, Mike McCarthy had to be the figurehead in Green Bay, because the GM, Ted Thompson, just kind of hid in the back, and they don't have an owner there. So Mike McCarthy was doing all the media, all the press conference, which, he'll still do here.
No wonder he needed a massage.
Exactly, which is true, by the way.
Right.
I know he denied that, but I've had multiple people who are very close in that organization like, oh, yeah, it's totally true. But I also I will say this about McCarthy, and I've been skeptical about the hire just because I saw the way it ended in Green Bay and saw how ugly things got. But after really sitting on it and thinking about it, Dallas is not a team who needed to rebuild. They didn't need to explode the roster. They're pretty close. I talked to a former player who played for him in Green Bay, and he was telling me, like, look, Mike's is a player's coach. He may not be as relatable as maybe people think, just because he's got this kind of, white collar Pittsburgh type background, but like
blue collar.
Yeah, blue collar. Sorry. Yeah, blue collar.
It could be white collar with Mike. Now he's getting massages. So who knows, right?
Well, this is the player say, he said, look, we had an analytics department give us really good game plans on what percentage, let's name a passer, Khalil Mack. What percentage of pass rush moves is Khalil Mack? 25% of the time, he'll do a spin move. Things like that. Because like maybe in-game analytics weren't used, but on the offensive side of the ball, we had analytics and things like that. And I thought that was very interesting. But also the fact that he said, look, on Fridays, we would have light practices. He really wanted us to get rehab in the training room. We would have, massage sessions, things like that to get our bodies right for Sunday. Because if you remember, man, the 2011 Super Bowl for the Packers, or 2010, they were the 6th seed, and they jammed because Aaron Rodgers got hot at the right time. Mm-hmm. But that team had like 20 starters, banged up. Like they were getting through on backups to win that Super Bowl. And I think McCarthy learned from that, and even though they won, so I think he was going to put a premium on being healthy, which you're seeing, man. If you look at the Packers, who are 13-3 this year,
right?
Well, they only have one of their 22 starters who's hurt. Like they have their full lineup out there, and I think that's a big difference, man. When you start looking at how they're somehow found a way, are they a 13-3 team? Probably not, but they have that record because they've stayed healthier than most teams.
You just took the words right. You're reading my mind, because you mentioned Packers early in the interview, and that's where I want to go, because in fact, that's the game I'm most interested in, and that's the game that you're, of course, Cowboys coverage, and we're going to go over the games. We'll take a look at some lines here, and your coverage is brought to you by mybookie.ag. Kevin Turner, friend of the show, joins us here on Sports by Brooks on Fancred. But maybe it's not all that sexy. But the Packers Seahawks, I really like the Packers in this game. Really like them. And man, the Packers, they're 13-3. It's Aaron Rodgers. And I'm here to tell you, at least from the media people, without exception, everybody is sleeping on the Packers. Everybody. Now, are they right to say? That's why I want to ask you about your thoughts on the Packers. Are they right in sleeping on the Packers? Are they just not that good?
Well, when they've had to play the 49ers, I guess is kind of their measuring stick game on the road, and they got beat by 30, you kind of go, oh. And, another game I'd like to point out as an example They ended up getting the win. It was on Sunday night in Kansas City against the Chiefs. They won. They squeaked it out, but there was no Pat Mahomes. And you got the vibe watching the game that if Mahomes played, so yeah, I don't think Green Bay is on that level. I mean, first of all, I'll get ahead of it. My Super Bowl prediction is San Francisco, Kansas City, the Joe Montana Bowl, right? But I do think Green Bay is mastered the art of winning ugly. Like when you win ugly twice, 3 times, you go, wow, it's kind of sneaking through. They've won ugly 9 times this year.
Right.
And I don't know what their record is against.
Give me an example. I mean, give me kind of a general characterization. We know what winning ugly kind of means, but this year for the Packers, what does it mean?
Well, they're not top 10 in any offensive category. So they just kind of slug it around and get through it. Their defense is very bend, don't break. They end up doing a pretty good job of finding a way to not get lit up for 40 points all the time. But they've got holes now. They did a very impressive game. Their last game against Minnesota in week 16. Week 17, they looked week 16.
That was a winning ugly against the Lions big time.
Oh, my God. I mean, they should have lost the game. They would have been playing in the wild card round last week. Now, week 16 in Minnesota for the division game they had to win, Zadarius Smith and the Packers defensive line dominated the Minnesota offensive line. And I think teams like that who don't have a great offensive line, the Packers do stand a chance to play with. But I don't know. The line for this week, and you go to mybookie.ag for all the good action. I'll say this. That's not the game I'm most excited about this week from a betting standpoint. I've got my eyes set on another team. Is the line 4.5? Is that what you said? 4?
-5.
Oh, -5 now.
Yeah.
See, if we were 3, then maybe I'm in. 5 is a little much for me. Well, I'm nervous on that game, and I would probably stay away. And I would probably lean Seattle to cover that.
Well, if there's weather, which it sounds like there might be, right? And I think that favors the Packers. I think an X factor that doesn't get mentioned enough is Aaron Jones, and I do think the Packers defense, that's a big part of this team, whereas in the past it hasn't been. And and I want to ask you, because I haven't watched Aaron Rodgers that closely, but everything I've heard and when I've watched him, he struggled. I mean, is this the same Aaron Rodgers, or is he in physical decline, or is he hurt, or could he just break out in the play? I mean, what are you thinking on Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I think it's 3 things. I think it's 1, it's a man who's just getting older and he's not 29 anymore. And sometimes you will see him make throws where you go, man, hey, 29 Aaron Rodgers makes that throw, but I need you to go ahead and step into that thing, buddy. And just kind of flick it. Now, the other thing I would say, and this falls on the Packers, outside of Devontae Adams, outside who is a top 5 to 10 wide receiver in the league, and we know Aaron Jones is really good. You start looking at wide receivers there, it's a lot of 7th round and undrafted guys. And Jimmy Graham is slow. They haven't done a good enough job of giving him another offensive weapon to get separation, get open. Alan Lazard came through. You would want him to be your wide receiver 4 on a good team. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has fell off a cliff. Geronimo Allison got concussed, and he does not want to go over the middle at all. They just don't have enough weapons offensively. Aaron Rodgers, with a year off, another year in this offense, and if they go get him a 1st round or 2nd round wide receiver, a speed guy to pair with Devontae Adams, I don't think the Aaron Rodgers sharp decline is a real thing. I just think you're seeing a guy start to age a little bit and not have enough help.
As for the Seahawks, and of course they're worth mentioning because it's always going to be Russell Wilson against the world. And, man, he can pull it out. I mean, Deshaun Watson kind of in the same category. It's funny, we were watching Texans game over the weekend. My buddy lives in Austin, and he's a Texan fan. And I'm watching the Texans, and they couldn't look worse. And Watson's a non-entity. And it's turn the lights out. Party's over, Danny Don. So my friend down in Austin, he's like, nope, but DW4, he'll figure it out. I'm like, yeah, sure he will. And I walked out the door, went went to go get something to eat, come back, he figured it damn out. This guy, Deshaun Watson is such a special talent. But a couple of quick observations. If there's weather, that's going to affect Russell Wilson, potentially what he can do. And it's not like he's got any sort of supporting cast. I really, really like the Packers -5 in this game. So that's just my thought on that. The other thing about what you talked about with winning ugly and being at times wildly inconsistent, do you think that's because they don't have a coach? Even though LaFleur obviously done a great job, and he has done a great job, he got an amazing record.
Sure.
But do you think, like, when you see them just collapse out of nowhere or play really well, euphorically well one week, when you're not kind of expected, is that kind of reflecting in Matt LaFleur and having that kind of a young coach who's not really the anchor of the team right now?
Well, I almost give him a little more credit for hanging in there and making some of the decisions, because he is the play caller and the game manager. He's the guy calling timeouts and choosing when to challenge and, all that stuff. Look at their 3 losses. They lost to Philadelphia. That was a game in which they should have won early in the year. They couldn't punch it in on the goal line like 3 times. Then they had 2 big-time 20, 30-point losses. One was to the Chargers on the road. One was to the 49ers on the road. And Aaron Rodgers even made comments about, well, look, our traveling plans were weird. That may be first-year head coach figuring out how to get a team to California.
But that's also, hey, I'm not a leader. That's Aaron Rodgers telling you, I'm not a leader. When you say something like that, why would you? That's just my opinion. But
I think it's like, with Aaron, he's very calculated when he weighs in. The same guy that talked to me the other day, he goes, in the year that he said we're going to run the table when they were 4-6, he goes, we don't run the table unless he said that, because everyone in the locker room does respect Aaron. So I think Aaron is the leader. I just think he's very calculated when he says things he wants to change. But I think it's interesting. Aaron Rodgers is the type of guy who did not want to be involved in the Packers coaching search. Hold on, I'm going to cough. I've got laryngitis.
It's all good, man. All good.
Sorry. I also went to a concert last night. And
wow. What'd you see? Who'd you see?
Oh, the Black Pumas. If you haven't seen the Black Pumas, great Austin band.
YouTube them, man. I'm going to YouTube them when we get done. Black Pumas.
Nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys.
Really?
With the likes of Lizzo, and those Black Pumas are incredible and getting better.
Really? Well, if it's Austin, dude, you're ahead of the game right there. If
absolutely.
You make it in Austin, you can damn make it anywhere. It's now at that point in Austin.
And they found a second home in Dallas, and I just keep your eye. Okay. One day someone's going to see them on Saturday Night Live and go, I heard that on Fancred with Brooks.
Yeah, right. We were way ahead of it. But now, was there smoke there, or were you partaking in adult beverages? Was it a sleep thing, or what happened? Was it cool outside, or what happened?
The adult beverages, absolutely. Yeah, it was a 2 a.m.
Nothing wrong with that, dude. Nothing wrong with that.
But I'll say this, with the Packers, what you're saying about Matt LaFleur is very interesting. But I do think he deserves credit for getting them where he's at. The 20-degree weather in this game is what we're looking at, according to NFLweather.com. So Marshawn Lynch, Chris Carson would have scared me in this game. Packers got to be willing to tackle, and the Packers will play a dime a lot of the time. They will play a 4-1-6 sometimes, or a 3-2-6 with 6 defensive backs. Seattle's their biggest issue.
They're going to run that against Russ, don't you think? What do you think? He's the kind of guy you run that against.
They don't have enough linebackers. The Packers don't. So Seattle, in spite, Russ pulls these games off in spite of his offense because they run the ball more than they should.
His whole career, listen, Pete Carroll. I cover Pete Carroll. His first when USC first started to win big. That was a transcendent situation. Just to tell you about Pete Carroll. So when he was at SC and being around his personality, my point is his personality and what I think of him in general. And I think he's really overrated in Seattle, but it's really Russell Wilson. And one of my points about him is having covered him. I covered him every day, dude, when he was at SC from the very beginning to the very end. And when he hit it big, it was because he had guys like Orgeron on his staff and Norm Chow, who he knew were going to stand up to him, right? And challenge his authority at some time. And man, they had an unbelievable team, and it was great. And he did a great job coaching. But when he started to kind of get full of himself and start hiring graduate assistants as coordinators, Rocky Cito, at USC, everything went to pot. Everything went downhill when he kind of started to really buy into his own celebrity and fame and winning forever. And when I see people fawning, and it's not like they really are necessarily, I don't want to make, a big deal out of something that might not necessarily be true, but man, it's Russell Wilson. That's what it's all about in Seattle. It's not Pete Carroll. And I don't know. That's what do you think? I mean, what do you think about Pete Carroll?
Well, I mean, to me, and I always like to lump in the play callers too, just for fun, and Schottenheimer too. The way they just insist on playing close games. It's like, man, would you guys open it up and let Russ cook? Because he can go win the game with his arm a million times. Just get ahead for once.
Wasn't it the Cowboys game last year? Wasn't it the Cowboys playoff game Seattle had too? It was like insanity, the play calling.
Yeah. And it was some of the things that people were complaining about in the Garrett offense with the play calling a couple years ago. Just like, let him cook, man. And look, you can run too. I mean, Seattle's defense is not what it used to be either, and that's where I kind of look at it. But man, I'm watching football all year long. To me, and I'm gonna leave the Saints out of this just because Drew Brees got hurt. The best 4 teams in football to me this year were San Francisco, Seattle, Kansas City, and Baltimore. And I think that's kind of where we're trending.
To me, that's you saying, hey, Lamar may have gotten the MVP, but Russ Wilson's the best player in the league. If you've got Seattle in that category, that's saying Russ Wilson is the best football player on earth.
Maybe valuable, right? Valuable maybe makes a difference. I still think Lamar's done things like I was dying to see Lamar in New England again. Although, look, Mahomes Lamar is what we all deserve as humans who do good. If we do good, if you're not a good human, you do not deserve to see Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. But like, I was interested to see, could Lamar get Belichick twice? Because that is, hold on.
And with Belichick, with Lamar, I should say, I mean, there's nothing you could do. Sorry, get out of jail free card. You can't scheme for this. But of course, Belichick's in the same boat with everybody else.
Hold on, I got another cough. Hold on.
No,
we're good. We're good. Here's where I'm going all in on mybookie.ag this week, Brooks.
Okay, give me your picks, and I'm not going to interrupt you because I've done that the whole time. You just
all in. No, you're fine. I'm all in. In fact, I'm going to go to Barry over here. Barry, you see Barry in the corner. Barry's
he
lives with me. My roommate.
All right. There you go. Texas Rangers, old school.
Well, we're going all in on, and his bit is he wears the sweatshirt of the team that's out of season, just so he don't jinx anything. We're going all in on the 49ers.
Okay.
All in.
Vikings, 49ers, and that's I've got -7 right now from mybookie.ag. So you're -7 on the 49ers. Give me your analysis on that game.
Vikings offensive line, horrible. 49ers defensive line, fearsome.
The end.
Game over. Kirk Cousins doesn't have time to throw. He ain't going to win. He can't get away from the rush enough. That is I am going back to that Week 16 game where the Packers dunked on Minnesota in Minnesota. You're going to go to the West Coast with that team who's just happy to finally win a playoff game. I don't think this is a situation where Kirk's getting hot like Nick Foles a couple of years ago. I don't think it's that. I think San Francisco dominates Minnesota, and I'm going all in at mybookie.ag, but I'm using my promo code so I get the free money.
Sweet. Yeah, that's great. You're making people money, too, on top of that. That's a pretty good damn deal. So are there any other games you're looking at, or is that it? That's your lock.
The AFC games, I'll be honest, the AFC games make me nervous, but I do like Baltimore and Tennessee. I mean, I feel like I'm going with Baltimore. I mean, look, Kansas City's my Super Bowl pick too, so I guess I should probably get a little action on that one. So I feel good about in order, I feel good about San Francisco. I feel like Baltimore covers. I feel like Kansas City covers. Green Bay, Seattle's the one that makes me the most nervous, and it's the lowest point spread.
Tell me about the Titans. What are you thinking about in going all in on it? Just the Ravens are really good, or you're not really high on the Titans?
I just don't think the Titans are that good, and I think you find out that maybe the Patriots weren't that good. How are the Titans going to score enough points in this game against Baltimore? Baltimore's defense has been sneaky good. No one talks about it because, of how Lamar's taken over the league. But I just don't see any scenario where Tennessee goes into Baltimore and gets in a slugfest.
Dude, I think they can score. I mean, they got some. Obviously, they got some weapons on. And Tannehill's been lights out for the most part. Second half of the season, dude. I wouldn't be. And the Ravens' defense it's not a world beating.
No,
think of defense, but it hasn't been. Now they could they could literally give up 50 points. The Titans could, and it looks like the weather's going to be nice. Not good news for the Titans, but I wouldn't sleep on that Titans offense. And Derrick Henry, obviously unbelievable player, but Tannehill has been really the difference for me with them.
I just think they're going to have to make a play or two on the outside, and I don't know who that guy is. I don't know if I'm counting on Corey Davis. A.J. Brown, great. Heck, AFC Rookie of the Year candidate, but you're kind of going to be more of an underneath guy, things like that. Who's going to make a big play downfield, game-changing?
Keep him honest for Derrick Henry, right?
Absolutely, and I don't know if you kind of saw that even in the New England game. You didn't see him take a lot of shots down the field because it's hard to do that against New England, but they're going to have to take a shot, and they can have a little success on the outside against Baltimore. But, with Seattle, we're now discovering that DK Metcalf can be a down-the-field, threat. Just to open it up a little bit.
Unbelievable. How about that guy? Unbelievable. If that guy – and why wouldn't he get it? But if that guy starts to break loose, you talk about a scary player. Scary.
He was my first or second wide receiver graded last year, and I covered the draft and do all 3 rounds of the draft for the
What happened in the draft, Sam?
I think people got in their heads that he couldn't turn, and that's kind of true. I mean, he's not going to be a great dynamic route runner. He's never going to do that. I mean, he's a beast, and I think people got scared away by what happened from another Ole Miss guy, Laquan Treadwell, a few years ago in Minnesota. But fact is, here's the story here. DK Metcalf, now that people get to know him, and you don't know this when you're scouting players unless you're an NFL team, DK Metcalf, a good studier, a good playbook guy. He's going to really try to figure out some ins and outs of the offense to get better. You find out years later about Laquan Treadwell, he's a guy who never learned the playbook in Minnesota. If you can't do that, you're not going to be it. Laquan Treadwell is not as beastly as DK Metcalf, but he is a 6'3", 220-pound guy. The thing with Metcalf's speed is so different, too, for a guy that big. I remember when he fell to Seattle, just kind of looking around again. I'm covering and studying the Cowboys and a Packers fan and going, why does Seattle get this guy? Why couldn't it have been Tennessee? I don't know how he fell to 64 or 60 or wherever he went, but he should have never fell that far in the draft.
So you're saying he had a rep as being stiff? As a stiff guy, and he's an outside receiver, he's a speed guy, and how long is that speed going to necessarily last, or what? I mean,
and at the time at Ole Miss, that offense was such garbage. Even though they had him and A.J. Brown, they ran a stop route, a go route. Okay, maybe we're going to work in a slant.
Give me a break.
It's like, dude, make your guys go across the field, make your guys run a post, make your guys run a post corner, make your guys run pick routes, things like that, and you just don't have that. So,
what do you think of Leach at Mississippi State?
I love it. I'm now a Mississippi State Bulldog fan. I'll tell you that much. So full disclosure here, I went to UNT, the University of North Texas. So
right, sure.
It's Conference USA football. So I get to have fun and pick
Clay Helton.
I get to have fun and pick actual teams for college for fandom, right? So it's been great.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend went to Texas Tech. So I was always kind of like, I pull for Texas Tech. But you can't help but fall in love with Mike Leach. Mike Leach is the one guy, and I'm not saying he would do it right now, and I wouldn't bother him on a day like this, but Mike Leach is the one college football coach. The odds on mybookie.ag would be highest that if I texted him that he would or if I called him, that he would answer and talk to me. Like Mike Leach will answer his phone no matter what. He doesn't care.
Right.
Man,
he's a really interesting personality because to me, I actually talked about it early on, and I dealt with Mike when I was covering the Craig James thing. I was really reporting heavily on it and getting scoops for my website years ago on SportsbyBrooks.com. So Mike was kind of following me, and we had kind of a quasi relationship. And there's things that, man, you really love about him, but he could be a big dick too. I mean, when he took the kid's name out of the record book, that's when he really lost me at Wazoo, when he did that. I mean, you're that old and you're still doing that stuff.
He's got these weird things, and I don't know if he does it. I almost think he's so aloof sometimes that it's not done with ill intent. I do think
I agree with you.
He wants to I think he wants to like set messages and stuff, but I don't think he always thinks it through all the way, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's amazing that you said that about that. You just threw that out there, and who knows if it could be true. But I was talking to our producer, Cam Smith, Cam, and Absolutely. I was talking about, I'm going to talk about Mike Leach and talk about my, quasi relationship. And he's a dick. I just don't like it. And when you said that, you know what, he's the kind of guy who would probably answer. And how many people would do that? Nobody. And that kind of caught me and made me think that. And then you said, maybe he's not doing this stuff necessarily. He's probably the least self-aware person ever. Right. Yeah. And so that's the good news and that's the bad news. And so maybe I'm not going to, hammer him quite as much, but I will say this. What he did with the kid at Washington State was unforgivable. My quick thought on let's I want to know what you think about the SEC, how he's going to do. So my thought I'm talking about Mike Leach you said Craig James, right? Yeah. By the way,
I think Craig James is a douchebag.
Right. Now, is he still just living out on his ranch and doing his thing in the suburbs in Dallas?
Probably. And I'll just go ahead and say this. I thought it was pretty good concussion protocol. The kid did not need to be out looking at the sun.
Right. By the way, Craig James blew it. He could have saved us from Ted Cruz. That's not a political statement. Has nothing to do with, but I remember Craig James because he was running for office at the time. You probably remember when the Leach thing was going on, and he literally got like 0 votes. It was just this unprecedented, historic. He didn't get any votes. But so looking back on that now, I was so in Leach's camp, and I was telling Cam before the show, I kind of regret it a little bit because I think Mike was really treated unfairly, and it was a double standard. And in a sense, I'm glad I did it because I think that's endemic to the broadcast business, that is absolutely no accountability in television. What's going on, high profile TV doing the game, there really isn't. And so I'm glad I did it, but kind of getting to know Mike a little bit more. I don't know. I'm not all that comfortable about it anymore, but I want to talk to you about Mississippi State and SEC because I think he is potentially like the perfect guy for Mississippi State because Mississippi State has resources. They obviously recruiting, things like that, to be a 500 above 500 team every damn year. Yeah. Instead, it's like every 2 or 3 years, they fall off the face of the earth. And Mike Leach is the best high floor, low ceiling coach in college football history. The big key here is going to be recruiting because he just Texas Tech, it's amazing what he did at Texas Tech. When you think about how tough that job, that's a tough job. Ask Cliff, right? But Mike just doesn't recruit. I mean, I shouldn't say that because what he did with Washington State, dude, was also phenomenal. But the SEC, bro, that's a whole new ball game. I want to know, do you think Mike Leach is going to make the effort and prioritize recruiting at Mississippi State? Does he have to? What do you think he's going to do there?
I think it's going to be very dependent on his staff because I think you're right to an extent. I think Mike has a way of getting people to go there, but it may not be the 5-star guys. And I think he's got a way of getting the most, especially in offense, getting the most out of these 2, 3, 4-star guys. which I think is a very good trait to have. But, you go to the SEC where everyone is starting, 11, 3, 4, and 5-star guys. It's going to be really tough to keep up. I just know that I'm pulling for it because you said the lack of self-awareness. That's a horrifying trait for someone to have to interact with on a day-to-day basis.
That's it. I think we figured it out.
From afar when you don't have to deal with him. Like, I'm just going to enjoy the funny press conferences. Think he's funny. I'll try to get him on my radio show every now and then, and it'll be fun.
Jerry Jones, lack of self-awareness, poster child. Now, people might not look at him in that context, but what Jerry Jones is doing and has done for decades, and it'd be one thing if they were in the playoffs consistently, had won a Super Bowl in the last 25 years, something like that, but he's done it this way. Nobody's ever done it this way, where the owner has the radio show. He's the guy. I remember people for this last go around where they really weren't hiring a head coach necessarily because Garrett was still there. It was bizarre, but I remember people saying in the media, the Cowboys have to get Sizzle as their head coach. Well, it's the exact opposite. The exact opposite for the head coach. Jerry is the freaking Sizzle, period. And so when you think about a guy who's had no success doing this over and over and over again, I understand what he's done with the franchise. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. The stadium, it's incredible, right? But keep in mind, they're no longer America's team, even though he's done an amazing job. You can't take that away from him. The Patriots are, and they've lost that profile. But if you do that, as long as he's done it and you're still doing it, am I fair in saying the guy has a lack of self-awareness?
So here's what I think. Maybe a little bit, because I think you can get lost in a world where you have a lot of money and you have an ego and all that stuff. But he is very well aware of the criticisms about him. He's very well aware that people think, well, at least media locally, try to hold him accountable for being too loyal. He's very well aware of that. He's very well aware that they haven't won and need to win. So he knows all that stuff. I just think he looks at it. Jerry's a little more calculated, I think Jerry kind of looks at it and goes, well, I've still bought this thing and built this thing. And no matter what anyone wants to say about the Cowboys being losers or whatever, they're not. Jerry is a winner. Right. And it all shows up in the bank account. It shows up in the TV ratings every year where they're the most watched team. They are more lucrative than most those big soccer franchises, Mm-hmm. Like they are a legit Laker Yankee type thing. Right. And Jerry knows that's a victory. And that's why I think you don't see change, because he's like, why would I let someone else come in here and take this over? I can do this. And I think he wants to prove that he can do it. And
maybe it's more of an ego thing. And that's why I'm having you on the show, because it occurs to me as you're talking, wait a minute, Kevin knows Jerry a million times better than I do, and so that's my thing from afar. He's kind of a superficial, blowhard talk show guy, right? But and it's also made me think when you were talking about Jerry there, that a lot of it depends on your perception, what your outlook on life is. And Jerry Jones is a transcendent businessman in the 20th and 21st century. Unbelievable. Yeah. And he has, if anybody in the history of the world deserves as an owner in the NFL, no one's ever done it. But if anybody ever deserved to do it, it would be him. My whole point, though, is they haven't, fulfilled what the Cowboys are all about, going to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl. And you would think after a while, and who knows? The thing is, Steven might be involved. I look at the McCarthy press conference. I was really, it's the same old story. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't a good look, man. I've kept you way too long, man. I can't thank you enough for your insight and help me make money on mybookie.ag. And I got free money with my promo code on Fancred. So thanks so much, man, for putting up with me. I appreciate it, Kevin.
No, I'm happy to pop on. It's good to talk a little football, and I apologize for my coughing fit.
Oh, dude, don't worry about it. It's been great getting your insight on this stuff, and we'll talk to you soon, man. Stay in touch.
Yeah, and keep an eye on the Black Pumas. as well as the Rangers this year. Barry's big year planned here.
The Texas Rangers.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
wild card.
I'm glad you remind you. Hey, by the way, Cam, put Black Puma up on the board so I don't forget. Black Puma is after the show. So I go to YouTube, check them out. Thanks for the tip, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good one. Take care.
That is Kevin Turner, and he runs Dallas, period. The guy's been around a long time. He knows Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is on his radio show. And here I am screaming and yelling for 45 minutes, telling him about Jerry Jones. But when we got into that self-awareness thing, and you're talking about Mike Leach, I'm really rooting for the possibility that most of his behavior is based on a lack of self-awareness and not just like abject arrogance, right? Delusion, because I think a lack of self-awareness, it's kind of like, it's kind of a psychological thing, isn't it? You're kind of born with that. So, but it's funny too. By the way, let me reset the show. It's Sports by Brooks on Fancred. That was a great segment with Kevin. Jesus, we kept it forever. And we didn't even get to all the games, for crying out loud, because of me, of course. MyBookie.ag, though, we really appreciate their sponsorship this football season and with the Cowboys. We have the Cowboys nailed to the floorboards with our coverage, and it's thanks to MyBookie.ag. If you go there and you type in the promo code FANCRED, freaking double your deposit right there. And I told you what I've actually got two picks here. I've got the Packers. And the MyBookie.ag line is -5. I really, really like the Packers. And I don't know, this is an emotional thing because I'm a Chiefs fan, grew up in Kansas City. And that's why I'm so, crazy and kooky and emotionally scarred, as you can see on SportsbyBrooks on Fancred. So, as a Chiefs fan, you probably are a fan of one of those types of teams. You just can't get your hopes up. But I will say this about the Chiefs against the Texans. And I think you're probably thinking the same thing about the Texans. That game could be 100-0. The Chiefs win. They could beat the Texans by 700 points. The Texans are, for me, the most unpredictable team in the league. And that speaks volumes to who. I was at a loss that they came back and won that game. I was in a state of shock because Bill O'Brien is a guy that I just root against. I can't help it. And, he can't be that bad a guy. Everybody talks about him. And not so much on the air per se, but when I talk to reporters and you talk to people that that follow the league and fans and things like that, gee, everybody hates Bill O'Brien. And you always Bill O'Brien's the guy. This goes back to Penn State. He's the guy. And I wonder what it was like with the Patriots. I got to ask somebody like Tom Curran next time we have him on the show from NBC Sports Boston, friend of the show, Tom Curran, what he thinks of O'Brien now compared to maybe the way he was with the Patriots. By the way, did you get the Joe Judge clip? Did you get a chance to do that? You probably didn't because you're working, Cam. But Cam Smith is our producer as always. And you make the call here. I actually would like to do, because we have some clips I want to show you, especially the Cowboys presser, because they're funny. At least one of them is really funny. They're not that long, but they're extremely telling, completely unwittingly. Right. And I think that speaks to a lack of self-awareness. And, when you talk about your outlook on life, look, if, you judge Jerry Jones based on his, 1 in a billion business career, which he deserves all the credit for, right? And you're a Cowboys fan, maybe you can live with the franchise. Really, it's not an embarrassment anymore, but man, it was an embarrassment when Jerry was really into the team with personnel. It was a disaster year after year for decades for the Cowboys. Much better now, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Jerry's not as active in the day-to-day, and you got a Will McClay there, and you've got Stephen Jones, obviously, but I don't think Jerry is nearly as involved. I think where Jerry gets involved is the McCarthy situation. So as far as the Chiefs go, this is like a wet dream game for me because obviously I'm a Chiefs fan. The one thing that bothers me is you can't swing a dead cat without hitting somebody picking the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. They're my pick. Now, folks, all right, pump the brakes. What about the Ravens? All right, go with the Ravens. Don't jinx us. Please stop. Stop. Do you know how many times we have gone through this? We're not good favorites. I don't care who we have. I don't care what year it is. The Chiefs as the preemptive favorite. Is that what they call it? Presumptive favorite, I think it is. Not a good sign if you're a Chiefs fan. And I don't care who we're playing, especially in the playoffs, -10. That's like, wait a minute. Did the guy who's doing the lines at mybookie.ag, he had like a key or something? Was he eating like the Subway brisket and he was typing in the line and he hit a wrong key? It's -10, right? I don't know about that. Now, it's the Texans, so I'm not going to, give you a call on that game because, it's an emotional game. One of the games I was looking at, though, when you look at over-under, is the Seahawks and the Packers. And I think you really got to look at the weather there. It sounds like there's going to be weather, which is an indication to me that the under is really going to hit there. It's not the same Aaron Rodgers, right? They don't use Aaron Jones enough. The Packers defense is better this year. It's not great, but it's better. Now, huge red flag. It's a huge red flag if you've got a team like the Packers winning a lot of close games. A lot of people say, well, if you win a lot of close games, that's a good sign. Like that's good coaching or it's clock management. No, it isn't. Winning close games is like the takeaway stat, right? If you're living off takeaways, like let's say the Bears last year, Mitch Trubisky was a great draft pick because you got a lot of takeaways, but you can never count on them. That's a statistic that's an binary statistic. You never know what you're going to get. You can't count on it. And you can win 9 close games one year, and you could lose 9 close games the next year with the same team. If you're paying attention, that's what happens. So, and I'm glad we had Kevin on because he really pointed that out to me, reminded me of that with the Packers, because I'm all in on the Packers. I told you that's my pick for the weekend. It's the Packers -5. And I think you really got to take a look at the under. What is it? 24 degrees right now at Lambeau. That's not that big of a deal. I mean, we're all thinking about Russ. The weather, how is it going to affect him? DK Metcalf playing well. That doesn't really scare me if I'm looking at this game. It's just the Russell Wilson show, and we'll see what happens. But I have absolutely no faith in a Pete Carroll coach team. 0. I think Pete Carroll is, maybe I'm being a dummy. He's a Super Bowl coach. I covered him for all the years he was at SC. I covered that every day. I worked at the USC flagship station, took calls on Pete Carroll for like 9,000 years when he was coaching at SC. And I broke that down a little bit with Kevin. Let me move back here on the camera. When what happens is when we have guests, I'm a little more likely to to kind of chill back here. But once we start to do the Richard Pryor monologue, well, I got to get up there. I should actually do what Pat does, Pat McAfee, get like a mic stand or something. By the way, I don't know if you heard this, Cam, because at the time Pat was walking around. He was walking around, I guess, in his house where he has this indoor basketball court with the glass backboards. He's like, "Yeah, I'm in my house." I'm like, "What? That looks like you're at Equinox, dude. That's your house. Great. Wonderful." Jim Nance, next door neighbor. Jerry Jones, who apparently has a house because that's where he, Mike McCarthy spent the night, had a sleepover. Jerry Jones, I don't think of the word house when I think of Jerry Jones. I think of compound, estate, houses, right? I don't think of house. But so what I want to do is I want to go back to I really want to go back to the Cowboys, because if we don't use the clips, it's Friday. We probably won't. Obviously, we won't go back to them next week because it's Mike McCarthy. But I think it's the Cowboys are one of our, the subjects, the topics that I live for. Oh, before we get off the games, though, I also want to, if you would, maybe take a look at those clips, Cam, because I want to run just the first two that we have of McCarthy. We got the other Jerry Jones clip too that we may or may not run, but I want you to see Mike McCarthy in his press conference. It'll be worth it. Now, we talked a little bit about it with Kevin, Titans and Ravens. And I do like the Titans. You heard me say it. And Cam pointed this out to me, our producer, Cam Smith, that, Tannehill, it wasn't like he was a world beater against the Pats, but he didn't need to be. I mean, and it really wasn't like the Titans were world beaters. The Patriots sucked for the most part. I thought Brady played pretty well, a lot better than he did against the Dolphins. And that showed me, Brady can play. I don't think Brady's an all-pro. He'll probably make all-pro if he has a decent year, whenever he does, for obvious reasons. But the one thing about it, though, I really sense a rift. Now, or at least a perceived rift with the Patriots and Tom Brady, period. My guess is, because of course it's all guessing, unless you're Tom Curran, right, or Phil Perry, or the guys we have on the show, Mike Girardi. My guess is, at least the perception is with Kraft and Belichick, they might be thinking to themselves, "Look, we've been doing this the same way, Tom, for all these years. Look, you're the guy who didn't allow Don Yee to get involved and nail our ass to the floorboards like you should have. And now, when you're 72 years old and you really never made plays on your own anyway. But when you were younger, you were much more likely to do that. And that's when you really needed it this year. But Tom, dude, you've been doing this and approaching your money, your career, all those things the same way. And now all of a sudden you're pissed off, right? Because you can't get 2 years, or you can't get the representative money that you haven't gotten all these years. Tom, didn't you realize that our success, all those playoff appearances and Super Bowls, was based on bloodless analysis of ability? That's our success, Tom. And it applies to you too, in case you forgot. Actually, he hasn't forgotten, because Bill Belichick's let him know that, and it was stunning, and it's amazing that the media doesn't point it out. And that's why I'm like at a loss sometimes talking about the Pats. If you watch the show, you probably see I'm like at a loss that how Belichick, does the passive aggressive. I don't know if you call it passive aggressive, but the way he comported himself when he was talking about Brady and when he was hammered with all the questions about it, he blew them off. And then he got a really good question where he got boxed in. Then he really let us know how he felt about Brady. He feels about Brady the way he feels about everybody. If you can play, right? Great. You're going to be here. If you want to give us some money to pay other guys, great. We appreciate it. But there are no gestures here. There are no gold watches here, right? In the history of the NFL, the last place in the history of the world where you're going to go to gold watch. And of course, that's the irony with the Patriots situation. What's so extraordinary is the NFL is a gold watch league. That's the problem, because everybody's making $300 million a year from television. They don't have to worry about it. There's no accountability with the owners and hiring practices and coaches. That's why you see this freaking nut job, Jimmy Haslam. The guy's a nut job. He's crazy. What's going on right there? And it really, Josh McDaniels going over there, and that's really weird. I don't think it's a good look when you've got McDaniels and the media is following him. He's on the plane with a wife, and the Browns are tweeting that he's interviewing. That's really weird. That doesn't make sense. That's not Bill Belichick. That's not his style. I think it might be an indication that, Josh really wants out. That might not be because of the Patriots, or anybody like Belichick, but maybe now it's time. And so, hey, I was a little surprised that he didn't get a better look from the Panthers or the Giants. Didn't get a sniff, it sounds like. And now we're making this big deal about the Browns. It was also very interesting that Tom Curran told us yesterday. That's why we have Tom. Tom is amazing. When I asked him if Josh leaves, is there a possibility that could dislodge Brady or make it more likely he'll leave? And Tom Curran, NBC Sports Boston, said he didn't say, I think so, or I think no. No, he said, no chance. It doesn't have any impact on what Tom will do, which I found fascinating because, first of all, I don't know anything about it. That's why we're having guys on. That's why we have them on for you, but they're for me too. And but how many times have you heard people talk about the Brady McDaniels relationship and how close it is and how they work together so well? And I'm sure they do, obviously. But it's really interesting to hear Curran, just because if anybody really knows, if anybody has credibility, there's probably no person out there covering the team who has more credibility and is more likely to kind of play it, keep the ball in the fairway. Tom doesn't play safe. You got to follow him on Twitter, Tom E. Curran, all one word. He's a great follow, and he does not play safe, but he's a smart guy. And so when he gives us that kind of a pronouncement, and it's the opposite of what we're led to believe, right? That's when I really perk up and say, huh. And now we've got, and I know it was scheduled. The Browns are just doing this weird thing where they're putting everything on Twitter. We're going to fly this guy in and we're going to put it on Twitter and tell you about it. I don't know. We are going to hire a coach first, then a general manager, right? In other words, who gives a damn who the general manager is, right? Who cares? That's what you're telling us. It's a little bit like Cowboys coach McCarthy, and we're going to get to the clips here in a second. But the other thing I want to touch on, and we talked to Jay Crawford about it, and I just want to drive it home because this is so NFL. It is the ultimate gold watch league, and it's the opposite of the Patriots, and this is why the Patriots do as well as they do. You've got this guy, Paul DePodesta, in there running the show, running the search. It's bad enough he's a baseball guy, no experience, right, in football. I remember seeing his name. You probably had this same reaction. Paul DePodesta. Where do I know that name? Oh, Moneyball. Yeah, and the Dodgers and all that, Right. What? Browns? What are you talking about? What, like the St. Louis Browns? The Cleveland Browns? What's he doing there? Oh, he's not in Cleveland. He doesn't live in Cleveland. He pops in once in a while. He's like a general manager type of guy in the front office. What? Right. I mean, he has like a different title, but he was actually above Dorsey, and everybody. He is essentially, I don't know. He's kind of, I don't know if you'd call him a fixer, but he's the guy that Jimmy calls in the middle of the night when he wants to be assured that everything's okay, right? Because DePodesta has somebody on the payroll feeding him emails with statistics about the Browns that Paul is going to have when Haslam calls in the middle of the night, so he can tell him, yep, you're right, Jimmy. Yep, you're right. And let me tell you about this with the analytics. He's playing Haslam, DePodesta. But now, apparently, okay, he's involved in the coaching search. How do we know he really is? He's making the call. I'm sure Haslam's part of it, but that DePodesta has juice because the Browns come out in public and tell you, we're going to hire a coach first before the GM. In other words, DePodesta's running the football operation. That's what we're saying. That's what the Browns are saying, period. A baseball guy, the Moneyball guy, who doesn't live in Cleveland, right? And, I mean, his name's come up a little bit in the coverage of this, but, and you see them interviewing probably, I mean, well, I shouldn't say this because Kevin Stefanski, I would rank him ahead of somebody like Freddie Kitchens, right? I mean, I still can't believe he got the Cleveland job, or Kingsbury, or LaFleur, or Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. I would rank Stefanski above those guys, perhaps. But if they're above them, not very far above them. Because Kevin Stefanski, if you do 5 seconds of homework, right, is not responsible for the offensive success of the Vikings. That's Gary Kubiak. That actually, I think, is the guy that the Cowboys should have hired. But the Cowboys aren't a real franchise. They are. It's like Hugh Hefner. I think it's a good analogy, Cam. Hear me out on this. Hugh Hefner, right, and Playboy. Playboy used to be, in the first half of Hefner's career with Playboy. I mean, if you're really old like me, I'm not that old, but I mean, Hugh Hefner, who would you compare him to when he was like this guy with his television show and in Chicago, when he were based in Chicago? Everything went to pot when they came out to the West Coast, but Hugh Hefner would have Gore Vidal on his show, things like that. He was like this literary figure. But over time, things changed. And he just basically milked the Playboy brand, for the last 40 years of his life. I'm not criticizing it, but it was a joke. Good for him. That's his right. And I never really paid attention to Playboy anyway. It was a little sad because it's almost like Hugh Hefner had the Jimmy Johnson era, where if you're old enough, the Playboy interview, right? Alex Haley, is doing the Playboy. They would always have like big interviews. That all went away, right? So it became kind of a joke, to say the least, with Hefner. And I think to a certain extent, you could make an analogy to Jerry Jones. It's a joke. And McCarthy's a joke. And so why don't we cue up those clips? We have a couple of clips, and I'll know which one it is, Cam. So play those McCarthy clips. So this is McCarthy's introductory press conference. This is awesome. Stephen Jones is on the left. Jerry's on the right.
Mike, you mentioned before you've called plays at every part along the way. Will you continue to do that here? And how important do you feel that is to
nails him to the floorboards.
What you want the team to be, your ability to call plays?
I mean, I really think we should, there'll be a time for these. I'm not I'm not really ready to talk about it, who's on staff, let alone who's going to be calling plays. So right now as we build the offense, the structure and how we do things,
You got to be kidding.
will be similar to the way I've always done it. So, but we
Wait
can get
for
into those
it.
questions down the line.
Wait for it.
This is a question for both Mike and Jerry. Mike, I don't know how much you knew Jerry before now. I don't know if you've
That's our guy.
heard about
Friend
socks
of the
to
show.
jocks and everything else. Did y'all talk about the separation of church and state? And can you talk about how you guys are going to work together?
Wait for it.
Both of you guys.
Well, I think the best statement
Clarence, by the way.
that was said over and over in the interview.
Wait for it.
We're going to make we decisions. I'm
Bingo.
I'm excited about
We
what's in
decisions.
place here from in the personnel department. How it's structured. It's similar to where I've been. I think the job that's been done to this point, the personnel is very
Jerry
impressive.
and Steven
that was
on
a big
camera
attraction
right now.
for me.
Right
So
now.
I'm excited.
He doesn't
as
get a
head
one
coach
shot. That says it all. So the thing to pay attention to there is, hey, Mike, I know you're new to Dallas and maybe you're not paying attention to what's going on. Obviously, you don't know what the hell's going on. Because, Mike, if you think you're going to be calling the plays, buddy, apparently you're the last to know. Kellen Moore is going to call the plays, period. Now, I'm not saying that might change. This is me now. I'm not talking to the third person. I mean, if Kellen Moore really struggles, maybe Mike McCarthy sticks his nose in it. Like that's going to work out well. Like Mike McCarthy has done a good job, calling plays or designing offenses or doing anything on offense. It's a disaster. Mike McCarthy is there to be a placeholder, not for someone else to come in, but so it can be business as usual. Jerry and Steven can coach the team because they're the coaches, right? That's why Jerry's in the locker room after every game. That's why he has a radio show, because he's the coach. That's why the players go to him when they don't like what they hear from the fake head coach, right? Mike McCarthy is just, I shouldn't say he's, a professional son like Jason Garrett, because I think, maybe Mike McCarthy is apprenticing to be a professional son. I mean, think of all the things we've heard. If you're really paying attention, spent the night over at Jerry Jones's house. And what have we heard? Look, why don't we do this? Why don't we let's play the other McCarthy clip, and then we'll get to Jerry, because I want you to hear Jerry talking about his new son.
Obtained through PFF system. It's starting that process, and that'll be the expectation to just trust that process, and that's something that we're going to have to build and work on every day.
Mike, right here in front. During your time off this past season, how much did you get a chance to watch the Cowboys, and what did you think of the team that you saw?
I watched a lot of the Cowboys. Frankly, when the season started, I watched a lot of game tape, and then got into a
stick with it,
an
folks.
editing system that I
Stick
was
with it.
fortunate to attain through PFF. Thank those guys down there, Neil Hornsby and Chris Collinsworth. But we really just start tracking trends and looking at
Who's we,
a number
Mike?
of different things, situationally in football.
You didn't have a job.
And the Cowboys were, obviously with their excellent offense were a big part of those studies. So it was more situation specific, but I haven't just, like I said, early in the season, I watched a lot of game tape.
Mike, you
Ed
mentioned
Werder.
the year off, and you spent a lot of time with a bunch of other coaches that you hired
Got him
or
twice.
worked with, and you said you analyzed every play or watched every play of the entire 2019 season.
This is awesome.
What is it that you learned from that experience that you think will benefit you most here?
Well, I mean, I need to confess. I mean, I told Jerry I watched every play of the 2019 season, but I wanted the job. So
Watch Steven. Listen to Steven.
I haven't watched every play of the season, but
Bag holder.
it was just
Holding the bag.
I mean, you do what you got to do, right?
Wow. Look at Jerry looking away, and look at the body language, and look at Steven.
It was more about tracking trends, and it's
Wow. Wow. Cam, what do you think of that? Cam Smith, our producer. It's funny because I discovered that clip when I saw another media person say Mike McCarthy is a changed man. He's tearing it up in his. I'm not really exaggerating, but it was portrayed as Mike McCarthy's really funny now. He like told a joke, and so when I heard that, I'm like, what? Mike McCarthy? He's like a tree stump. What are you talking about? No, he's telling jokes now. So I got on, checked it out. That I guess you could call it a joke. I suppose, but I think it's Mike McCarthy's a joke and Jerry Jones is a joke. You put that in the context of Mike McCarthy's staying over for a sleepover. First of all, how does Adam Schefter find out that information? You think Jerry gave that to Adam Schefter? No, he didn't. I'm guessing an agent gave Adam that information. But now think about the professional son description that we have gifted Jason Garrett, right? The old LBJ thing from Robert Caro. It wasn't Robert Caro called LBJ that. I think everybody in the Senate called LBJ a professional son because he was such a great ass kisser. And I think Mike McCarthy's right there with him. Clearly, he has burst out of the gate in impressive fashion as a professional son to Jerry Jones. And to me, I'm not kidding around. Seriously, I'm not kidding around. You watch that whole thing where Mike says, I wanted the job. And Jerry wasn't really laughing. Steven lost his mind. And I think that's a little telling. And I don't know. It's funny because part of me feels bad for Jerry because I actually do. Why would I feel bad for Jerry Jones? I kind of do. Because if my perception is, Cam, I want to ask you this question. Do you think Jerry Jones is a figurehead with the Cowboys right now? Because when I put all those things together, that comment from McCarthy, the whole story, and it really kind of looks like, and Jerry Jones is, before this press conference, it was a match made in heaven. It was love at first sight about Mike McCarthy. What, Jerry? But do you think Jerry Jones is a figurehead? In other words, he's just out there and he thinks he's running things, right? Just like he always has. But guess what? You're not. Now, when it comes to personnel, he's not. And see what happened? They got a pretty good damn personnel. And Mike McCarthy said it in the press conference. You saw it. Because Jerry's not involved anymore. And now we have this joke of a hire. And I'm not, that's not a personal attack on Mike McCarthy, but come on. I mean, we know about that guy. We know he was a non-entity with the Packers, and he's an offensive coach, offensive guy, guru. Maybe at some point he was, but he wasn't at the end of his tenure with the Packers. And doing interviews with Tom Pelissero and Peter King, right, 5 minutes before you get hired by the Cowboys, ain't going to change that. Especially when you're not calling the plays. Kellen Moore is. And the Cowboys owners, those two guys, Steven and Jerry, they're going to decide, not you. Right? And so that's the situation. Period. But, Jerry's always out there. And he seems like, I haven't seen really him lose it or have a problem. In fact, it was a good sign. We have all these guys from 105.3 The Fan. Great guys, Jared Sandler, Jeff Kavanaugh, and of course, Kevin Turner's a radio guy, a radio mogul, runs the DFW radio market. Kevin Turner, who was nice enough to join us here a while ago. And Jerry, man, the fact he's able to go on the shows all the time, and you're not hearing, 77, starting to lose it, right? You're much more likely to say that about me than you are Jerry. But you know, obviously Jerry is there, but I really don't get the feeling, and I think we really start to see it with the presser, which we're going to show you. Why don't we show you the Jerry Jones clip right now? This is kind of a long clip, but it's extremely entertaining, right? And there's no big money shot
about how much you value second, looking to change, be reflective. You've talked about how much you value second chances. How much of those 12 hours with him did you find a commonality there? And a guy, as you said, that you wanted to have in the foxhole with you?
Like I said, you would have expected it, and it's true. That's what I do, is I should have this in my mind all the time.
Nonverbal.
About the parts to our football team. And it's a people business, so it needs to be about the people. And I'm exposed to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I'm very fortunate to have someone that I trust as much as I do in my family that also spend a lot of time. And it has to do not only directly with just the football, but it has to do with other parts of what this organization is about. I get too much credit for the ideas and the execution of what goes on around here that I get from those people, other people. I get too much credit. So that's that. I knew Mike's background. I know the backgrounds that he's had relative to how he's operated as coach and handle personnel decisions.
Sorry.
I know that. And believe it or not, before I got to be involved with the Dallas Cowboys, and this is all I'm going to say about this.
Here we go.
On my desk was, if you're willing to give others the credit, you'll conquer the world. Bam. And somehow this thing has turned me into something perceived that I
and that's what happened with Jimmy Johnson.
About it.
The end.
Because it is a we deal.
Right.
Oh, appreciate you.
Now it's a we deal.
Hey, Jerry, Steven.
Jimmy's not there. Jimmy
Jerry,
Johnson's
we talked
not
about
there.
this before. No coach has ever
Because
won
you
a Super
wanted
Bowl with two different teams. Why do you think Mike can get it done for you?
Oh my goodness, we've just spent a lot of time, but I just think it's an excellent.
But just Cam, watch Steve Jones here.
It's a lightning in a bottle. I think it's we were fortunate at this time.
Lightning in a bottle.
His time and to
bump on a log.
Have him sitting here, you don't worry about anything, but you want to see. You love the ambition and the fire in a young person.
Fire,
and, willing and
person,
dare to be great. You love all of that. But obviously,
he's projecting
you want
something that's
to
not
get
there.
The experience that
this is sales
is involved
101
in decisions, because we all know every young person gets stepped.
He's not a young person, Jerry.
We know that. That's part of
I guess
what
what
we
Jerry
are.
is, but
to be able to, you've heard it here today, to have someone that certainly has had not go exactly like he wanted it to over this past year or two, and to have him demonstrate that resolve just from afar.
Oh my
Plus,
God.
be able to sit there.
Projecting.
I mean, those things, Lombardi's are hard to get a hold of, and we know that. And it's had one of his own right here. To catch that right now and get our time to do it was just an opportunity. And,
he's a salesman. Got it, Jerry. Thanks.
Jerry came up to me while we were in the middle of the night.
That's embarrassing.
And he slides down to the edge at the end of the table. Mike was sitting here. And Jerry reached over and he said, what are you waiting on? And he said, you need to know this. I know we haven't had a meeting or anything.
Now, how old is Jerry?
Said Stephen is ready to
roll Jerry
here.
Jr. Or is it like
said,
Jerry
you
the
need to know that because we hadn't been able to get a talk.
Is that the great grandson?
Well, I just hated it that it looked like what it appears. And he said, when have you ever worried about how it looked?
Now that sounds like my grandpa.
We winked at Stephen, and he got up, and we came in. Next thing I know, he was wearing it out with Tracy in the other room, working on it, boy. And they were getting it done while we were continuing to get it done. And then they did their communication. Me too, Mike. I'll never forget.
This is
it's just one of those things, experiences that you get to have a bunch of on the way there before the kickoff or after the kickoff. It was a great night for us too. from that standpoint. But congratulations. My goodness, what you've done in a career. What a beautiful story. And we've all read about it and what you've done.
Forgive me.
And it's almost trite to say that it happened because of an interview.
Right. I can't understand why the Cowboys
everything that you're about.
Suck this year.
Everything you talked about,
monumentally,
everything that's on record.
Underachieved.
That's what a few hours or a better part of a day was about, but only a tip of the iceberg of what happened.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you all coming out.
Cam Smith, our producer, after watching that, first of all, I want to say this. That is classic. Someone projecting something, wants to believe it, projecting something onto another person that doesn't exist. And I mean that literally. And people might think, wow, it's a press conference. It's no big deal. There's nothing to read into. Oh, yes, there is. Did you just watch that? And we all kind of have, maybe it's not in your family, but that you had people like that around, maybe on the holidays or in your life. And he's a dear person, nice guy. And I'm not saying he's losing it. I don't think he's losing it at all. But yeah, it's funny. You bring up Cam Smith, our producer, brings up Steven. And he looks awkward. And I think to a certain extent. But now that we've watched that clip, you were probably saying beforehand, what, Brooks, just stop. You're such a hater. And you know what? You might be right. But actually, I'm not. Jerry Jones is awesome. I love him. Maybe not as funny or entertaining like Mike Leach. Maybe not as funny and entertaining as people want you to believe. But, I enjoy him. He's entertaining. And what I cannot believe is that Cowboys fans still enjoy him. Cowboys fans put up with him. Because if I was a Cowboys fan, I wouldn't be a Cowboys fan anymore, it's so, but you just saw Jerry. It wasn't like when he was giving that whole spiel about McCarthy. I mean, I think McCarthy looked much more kind of awkward than Steven did, but there was a little awkward. Steven's kind of, sneaking a glance across the table towards Jerry as Jerry's going on and on. But it's I got to think about that these are the kinds of things that I ponder and think about as I'm in the drive-thru at Carl's Jr. Waiting for the King Carl after the show. When Jerry is going through that nonsense, and it really is the definition of nonsense, but you get a layer now of hilarity because A, it's Mike McCarthy, and B, what Mike McCarthy is doing and how uncomfortable he is as this is going on. That is awesome. That's one for the time capsule. But to hear him say these things and everybody's sitting there and to a certain extent, they're having kind of the same reaction I am, probably. If I'm Clarence Hill Jr. or Newey Scruggs, friends of the show, I'm thinking to myself, keep going, Jerry, keep going. But so I don't think Jerry's out of it at all. That's not what that is, right? That's a guy who, how about him saying, this is amazing. How about him saying, Jerry, that it's all about we, right? It's all about we. Ask yourself, would Robert Kraft do that sitting next to Bill Belichick at a press conference for Bill Belichick? Would Robert Kraft do any of those things? Would any owner do any of those things with the greatest coach in my lifetime in the NFL, Bill Belichick? Right? No owner would do that in a million years. And in saying that, right, what you're really saying is, hey, this guy, Mike McCarthy, He's going to be freshening up my drink here in a second. That's why he was over at the house. He has to learn what we like to drink, what we like to eat. You know, he's got to be on call. And I mean, it's not that far. I mean, so that's amazing right there, watching Jerry and that situation. And it's like, boy, Brooks, you're really, man, why are you so angry or why are you taking it so seriously? Okay, folks. I mean, this is fun. It's games. I love it. I love picking games. MyBookie.ag. It's awesome. I love marching bands. And I love the Chiefs. I love all damn day not looking at my phones and my texts, and my phone is beeping the whole weekend because I'm watching the NFL, or I'm going to be watching Clemson against LSU. And that's LSU, by the way. That's LSU. Whatever the situation is, I don't care about the line. LSU over Clemson, right? If it's the line or the over-under, I'm not going to do the over-under with those teams, but LSU is going to win that game. Ohio State should have beaten Clemson. Clemson's not that good, okay? And it's coaching. They've got a lot of talent. Not good coaching. So that's my 2 cents. Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence is this transcendent NFL prospect. No, he isn't. Did you watch the game? The guy actually, I mean, that run was awesome, right? It's like a 91-yard run or whatever it was. It was one of those runs where when Lawrence scored against Ohio State, you're thinking to yourself, okay, when's the jig going to be up here? All right, this run's getting a little long here. 30 yards. Where is everybody over here? I mean, I'm waiting for the guy, a corner to come out of nowhere, one of those linebackers, and just destroy Lawrence because he's so easy to hit, right? He's the big Stork guy, big bird. So great. And that really wasn't a broken play, by the way. That long run. He had more than one long run. But who cares? He's not Lamar Jackson. Don't pretend he's going to be one of these mobile guys. He's going to live off that, right? Don't act like that's going to happen. Those runs were nice runs, but that's irrelevant. That's meaningless to what he's going to be expected to do in the NFL. But that's not the way people are portraying it. Now, I like Trevor Lawrence. I'm not criticizing Trevor Lawrence. And I like Clemson. I love what Dabo Swinney has done. It's pretty amazing. Not pretty amazing. It's amazing. I worked in South Carolina at the South Carolina Network, and I did a statewide talk show. And believe it or not, I've been everywhere in South Carolina for 4 years. Out of Columbia, South Carolina, I did the University of South Carolina coaches show, head football coach and basketball coach for 4 years. How about that one, Cam? And sorry. And I went to the University of Georgia. I can tell you what Dabo has done is amazing. And it's infinitely more impressive than what Nick Saban has done. Infinitely. And it's funny because I really, Dabo, in public, not giving the ring to Kelly Bryant, but then we're told what a wonderful guy is, and the players all love him. And I don't doubt that the players love him and he's a good man. I don't doubt that. But he does things, he says things. Oh, well, maybe I'll just give up coaching if they decide to give the players 45 cents. I'm just going to give it up, because I don't want this to be professional. So, man, I can go off on a tangent. Not really a tangent. I wanted to mention LSU Clemson. I was thinking about that walking in to do the show today because I feel strongly about that game. I feel strongly that Ohio State should have won that game, number one. And I don't think we've had a chance because of the holidays and when the game was, where I've been able to say this. I think Ryan Day, for the first time, had to coach, and he blew it. He came off the field at halftime and was freaking out when he did his interview. because that was after I don't know if it was the fumble, that horrible. I mean, obviously Ohio State got screwed. They got screwed on the fumble thing, but they didn't get screwed on the targeting. They did not get screwed on the targeting. So, and how many people have said that? Nobody. And I'm not saying I'm right, but it may have been a case of, and this is, I need to ask Herb Street this. We're going to have Herbie on. We'll probably have Herbie on next week, I hope. So believe me, I'm efforting 24/7 with everybody. We were going to have some people on today because they're on call, NFL guys, because they're on call because of situations with their employers, their networks, 24/7. They've got to be available to go on the air, to file a story, to check on something. That's how it works. They can't do our show. And you know what, dude? Those are the people you want on your show. You know, how many people out there in the media? I can tell you, not many, where something's going on. I mean, and it hasn't happened and it might not happen, but you're on call. And I'm not talking about, you know, the local guy covering, you know, something where we know the guy's going to come into town and you got to be around. So you're kind of on. No. This is potential breaking news stuff. And we have a lot of people like that. And so unfortunately it hasn't worked out today, but it's okay. And God knows, got a lot on my mind. What did you think of, did you watch, Cam Smith is our producer here at Sports by Brooks on Fancred. What did you think of the Joe Judge thing? Should we run maybe a minute or two of it just so people can see Joe Judge? And I think so. I think we should run like 30 seconds of it, or run like a couple of minutes. Let's see how long we last. Now, remember, Tom Curran, who's locked down on the Patriots, NBC Sports Boston. He didn't say this. I said it. Basically said Joe Judge is a dick. Now, Bill Belichick's a dick. So when somebody says Joe Judge is a dick, and I'm just forget Tom Curran right now. I'm not putting words in his mouth. I'm not telling you what he said. He said what he said. This is all me talking. But it's pretty clear that Joe Judge is a transcendent a-hole. And so let's just run this clip of, this is Joe Judge from the Giants official website.
The head coaching job to you?
It was very exciting. It was very humbling to come to a great franchise like this and represent a city like New York. It's a big task at hand. Right now, I'm just focused on getting to work. And
gives off the military thing.
What were some of the key things that you felt pushed you over the top?
Could be a good thing.
Because obviously you had to figure when you were coming in, interviewing for the job. Special teams coaches don't normally get head coaching jobs. Obviously, John Harbaugh's had a lot of success. What were some of the things that kind of you felt pushed you over the top?
You know, when I took this interview, I had a simple approach. I'm coming to have a conversation. I'm going to tell them what I believe in. I'm going to tell them fundamentally where I see my program going. And if that lines up with their vision and their philosophy, then great. And it turned out that it did. And I sat down with Mr. Mara,
Dave Gettleman.
Mr. Gettleman for a long time. We had a lot of conversations. And it was very reassuring when we realized that, you know, our philosophies and approach to the game were very much the same.
Explain to the fans what a Joe Judge football team.
Can you follow up on that last thing, by the way?
Look, I'm a little bit old school in my philosophy in football. I think it's a tough game. It's a contact game. If you want to win games, you have to be a physical team. You got to run the ball, stop the run.
It's going to be a tough guy to cover. Those are three things
you have to do to be a physical team. All right, we're going to look for smart, tough, fundamentally sound players. My job as a head coach is simple. Make sure we play fundamentally sound, all right, and make sure we can handle the situation with pressure.
Oh, my God.
Having worked under Coach Belichick and Coach Saban in your time at Alabama,
this guy's
what
no
are some
fun.
of the things that you took from them? And I think that's one of the questions from one of our fans,
Somebody
Zach,
like
in New
toss
York.
a water balloon.
Some of the lessons that you took from those places that you've been.
Well, I'll tell you what, working with Coach Saban, it's like drinking from a fire hose. It wasn't one lesson I learned, but
here we go, Nick Saban.
Talk to the staff or talk to the team. It wasn't about what to do. It was how to do it, what it's supposed to look like, and why it's important. And I think I took the big picture right there in instructing in that players need to know not only what to do, but how to do it, what the end result should be.
In other words, Nick Saban's insufferable.
What you find out with players is when you explain the why to them, above all,
he can't just tell you what to do.
As players, they can make adjustments in game and sometimes find better techniques to get the job done. And as a coach, you'll learn a lot more from the players when you build up their ability and versatility to think on their feet and make adjustments as the game goes.
So JD in New York wants to know.
That's actually
Royal Giants fan. In 3 words, how would you describe your coaching style?
I think you have to describe coaching style like you describe your team: smart, tough, and fundamentally sound.
You come from the Patriots, obviously.
Okay, we've reached the fundamentally sound quota already.
West Diagnostics Training Center,
and you're not even
have their own
next season yet.
Tradition. 4 Super Bowl wins plus the NFL championships prior to the Super Bowl era. What kind of burden does that bring to this job for you, and sort of the tradition that you're looking to continue?
It's a burden.
You got to take it step by step.
This guy has no burden.
Big task, but you got to take it step by step and just think about the process of what you have to do every day. At the end of the day, the little steps will lead up to the big accomplishments.
Can we get some slow motion? Oh, we get the slow motion.
And every day, one day at a time. You're not going to accomplish the big picture all at once.
There's some slow motion.
Build the foundation, and at the end, you'll have the result you want.
There's still a little Mike McQuarrie to him there,
special teams coordinator. You got to deal with and interact with an entire football team. You got to deal with guys on the bottom of the roster. You got to deal with people being injured, plus veteran guys that you need on specials. How are those experiences helpful for you transitioning now to this job?
Well, I think the most valuable thing I learned doing special teams is dealing with all 53 on the roster. And it's about using what you have available to you. It's about everyone getting to buy into the vision of the team, that they have to do whatever they need to do to let the team be successful in that specific game plan that
week. A lot of slow motion
against a particular opponent. You've got to deal with everyone. That's different personalities.
That's not slow motion.
That's different individual goals. That's different skill sets. You have to find a way to reach everybody, to teach them, and you have to find everyone to inspire them to go out there and execute to the best of their ability. And that's really what coaching is finding a way to teach your players and get them to go out there and execute to the best of their ability.
All right, we got another one from...
these are questions from fans. I'm sure they're...
Alex in Florida wants to know,
we get,
how do you
after
plan
this,
on utilizing Saquon Barkley in the offense this upcoming season?
How are you going to use
We're going to look to use our roster, top to bottom, however
fundamentally sound.
And week by week, it may be a little bit different. I've got to go in right now and dive into watching this tape and get an expert view from an insider's view. Right now, I have an outside point of view on the team, and I'd be going ahead and giving false information if I tried to go ahead and make predictions.
Like Mike McCarthy.
On anyone on our roster.
But that was a joke. It was really funny. Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. He said some things in there, and his position, and, great conversation with Pat McAfee, who I'd like to think, of all the people who've only been on once so far, I think he's a friend of the show. He might just be. Usually got to be on a couple of times to be a friend of the show, or maybe even 3. But Pat really was. And man, what he sent us a really nice text afterwards. Not just like a thank you. Dude, he's a thoughtful, endearing guy. And part of me is like, I kind of regret in some ways, he's jumping into the Brazos River. He's got the big turkey leg. That's great. But I think some people see that and they don't give him credit for, being somebody worth watching. I mean, I watched him this morning as I was stuck in this traffic break. I knew I was going to be late into the studio. I was sitting on the freaking freeway for 30 minutes. And dude, I had his show on, and because he gets it, he gets to it. So, but Joe Judge. So Joe Judge, and my point about bringing up Pat's a special teams guy, and I asked him about Joe Judge. What did he think of the hire? And he was positive about it, for obvious reasons. And he literally said what Joe Judge just said, and it is, legitimate. Obviously, when you're a special teams coach, you're dealing with all of the players, right? Including the guys, like Pat told us, who are pissed off because they're not playing, or guys who don't know your name. And you're also dealing with, and this is, I think, where staffing and head coach situation, preparing you for this, comes into play. As a special teams coach, you got to deal with assistant coaches, dude, the coordinators, but assistant coaches, because it's a pain in the ass to have the punt team, right? And if you have a guy go down, you're dealing with position coaches, you're dealing with coordinators, and of course, they're trying to figure out what's going on with their guys. So, I mean, it's like, head coaches actually don't do that, really. Obviously, they don't do it. But that's great training because it puts you in the fire with pretty much everybody at some point. I mean, he's not dealing with Tom Brady necessarily, And the guys are never going to be on special teams, but a lot of that, right? And the other thing is, somebody pointed this out. I guess Bob Sochi pointed out, voice of the Patriots on Sports by Brooks on Fancred. I'm Brooks Belgier, by the way. We're gonna wrap things up here in a second, but and it's really amazing talking to it's taken like having Tom Curran on like 5-6 times, and having Phil Perry on, and having Bob Sochi on, and having Greg Bedard on a bunch of times. Honest to God, man, having them on so many times, if you're really listening, before I started doing this show, I really couldn't tell you, all right, why are the Patriots so damn good? Right. Throw out the cheating, because, we don't know about any, I mean, we know, but we don't know. But why are they so good? Why is Belichick so good? And those guys who are on the ground and have pretty amazing insight, and the insight only gets better when you have guys on a lot. And that's a reflection of Cam, our producer, Cam Smith, and Fancred, that they come back as many times as they do and give us great stuff. But now, I mean, special teams and the middle to the bottom of the roster for the Patriots, that's like the secret sauce. Staffing and finding guys who are really competent, but don't have egos and aren't into titles, aren't me guys, but are very talented coaches. And I think that's Joe Judge. You think about, and I don't know anything about Joe Judge, but he said some things there that I thought I was killing the guy, right? With the cliches and everything. But then the second half of that interview that we showed you, he made some pretty, dude, he's coached all those years for Belichick. And now my question is, here's the last thing, Cam, and you can throw me off the air. I don't know about you, but we heard Burt Breer. We got to talk to that Burt Breer like next week. Start bothering him again and get him back. But and get that, he's got that beautiful Gunner, the Australian Shepherd, Albert Breer does. Awesome guy too. But when we heard, and we played the clip of Burt Breer saying that, I don't know how you put it, but it tells you a lot about Bill Belichick that Joe Judge is with the Giants, right? The special teams guy out of nowhere. And because I'm so default, Bill Belichick's selfish, pragmatist, look what he's doing to Brady, bloodless, all that stuff. Won't give anybody credit. We had the Vrabel the clips where he wouldn't acknowledge Vrabel. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm waiting for the shoe to drop with Bert. What's the next sentence? Is that good or is that bad? Is he trying to get rid of Joe and he has the power to do it? Or did he really set it up to get Joe that job, even though Joe didn't really he had a lot of years, but he didn't really have the titles and things like that. And then Bert explained that Belichick basically fixed it to help Joe Judge get that job. Of course, with Belichick, you're always thinking in the back of your mind, always gamesmanship, right? Maybe he's doing a little placement service in the division, or not in the division, but with the Giants, if I'm not going to be with the Giants, Bill, this is Bill, maybe we'll keep Joe over there, right? And I'm sure Joe will be great, right? He'll be just great for you guys. Go ahead and hire him. So, of course, the back of Bill's mind, maybe things might not work out here in New England. I might want to go back and coach the Giants. And, they're going to be 4-12 for a while. So, all right.
Coach that carries weight both on the team, because that is not something I would have ever expected.
Here we go. Last thing. Hey, actually a football question. I want to ask you, man, because yesterday we talked about Joe Judge, and I went off and said, that's a joke. That's a joke hire, right? Am I a dumbass? That hire by the Giants? Tell me about Joe Judge, and what do you think of that hire? Punch me in the mouth.
I don't know Joe Judge personally, so I can't punch you in the mouth with that. But what I will say is, if you're watching the Patriots all year, the thing that they were winning because of was their defense and their special teams. I mean, it was special teams highlight after special teams highlight after special teams highlight, which isn't normal because special teams is very hard to get an edge on. Very, very hard. You're dealing with the bottom third of the roster normally. Now, Matthew Slater is a superstar, but you're dealing with players that are arriving on the team on Thursday, on Friday. A lot of people don't even know their names. And the special teams coach has to take these players that probably shouldn't be in the NFL, but have a chance to make a play because of either an injury or something like that, get them motivated, get them all on the same page, in an act and a craft that they're not used to doing. If you made it to the NFL, you were a superstar on your team. You didn't play special teams. You didn't have to do a punt pass set. You didn't have to run back and block somebody on a kickoff. You didn't have to fly into a wedge. You were normally the superstar on your team. You just so happened to not be at that level with the NFL, so you have to play special teams. The special teams coach is the only coach that speaks to the entire team. They're the only coach that carries weight both on the offensive side and the defensive.
Wow, that's amazing. Boy, that's great. I look great there, don't I? With my eyes. We have a light here in front of me, and it's got two different settings. And if it's the wrong setting, I'm bug-eyed like hell because it's like blinding me. And you would think, Brooks, just get up. It's like when you don't want to get out of bed or something. And I kind of blew in here at the last second because of the highway patrol guy today. You know what a traffic break is, Cam Smith? You're a Texas guy, but you've been around. It's when the highway patrol guy, by the way, thank you so much for that clip. That's Pat McAfee. He was with us on the show yesterday talking about Joe Judge. So how about that? It's really amazing. But traffic breaks are when you're, I've never seen them until I came out here to LA. Happen all the time. So, hey man, I'm going to get there way ahead of time. I'm in great shape. I know it's LA, but hell, look at this. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a cop or a patrol guy or sheriff pulls in front of you and on the highway stops. And when he stops, everybody's got to stop, right? It's a traffic break. You say to yourself, why is he doing that? Right? Why is he doing that? I have no idea. I've lived here 20 years. I've been through like 100 of them. I still don't know why. Oh, the president's here in town or something like that. I still haven't seen a wreck or any reason for them to do it. So I sat in that traffic break when I was texting you today, those weird texts when I was using the voice text and everything's misspelled. I was just sitting there panicking, trying to get here. So I blew in here. And so the lights are off. That's the whole reason I was telling the damn story. The lights are wrong. So, let's play Albert Breer on Mike Judge one more time so people can hear what the hell I was talking about.
A little bit about what their next head coach is all about.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a very clear move that happened this time last year that tells you what Bill Belichick thought of Joe Judge.
Okay, that's what I was referencing.
Joe's been the special teams coordinator there for a while, and I think to some degree he was like a lot of
other
special
is that
teams
a good
coordinators,
thing?
a little frustrated that maybe he wasn't getting a sniff as much to be a head coach. And so, Bill recognized this guy as a head coach down the line, an NFL head coach down the line, and he did for Joe Judge what Andy Reid did for John Harbaugh in 2007. And, a lot of people sort of glossed this over, but John Harbaugh was in this spot, 13, 14 years ago. And his last year in Philadelphia, Andy Reid moved him over and had him as a secondary coach. And boom, the next year he winds up getting a head coaching job. And
Same thing with Patriots.
Belichick basically did that for Joe Judge. And he said, okay, I know you need to get some experience on one side of the ball or the other, and not just on special teams. Maybe to entice some of these teams to come and look at you. So I'm going to give you that. And made him the wide receivers coach. And what do you know? All of a sudden now, a year later, he's in the mix the same way Harbaugh was after 1 year as a secondary coach in Philadelphia.
That's like you're saying, why is he playing a clip from another show? We already played his old, because you got information there, right? That's solid gold, correct, right? That gives you tremendous insight into the situation. Burt Breer. I mean, I know we play a lot of clips on the show. Most of it's, hey, look at Jerry Jones. things like that. When we're putting reporters on it with clips, dude, it's because they're the best. And Albert Breer is definitely in that gold standard category, and a great guy to boot, a better guy. So great job by Cam Smith. Great week. Thanks to everybody at Fancred. We'll be back next week here every Monday through Friday, bug-eyed for you, Monday through Friday at noon Eastern time. All right, noon Eastern time, and we're going to have college football playoff talk, championship game talk. This is going to be an unbelievable game, folks. Can't wait, but I've already said too much. So thanks again to everybody for checking in. We'll see you on Monday right here in Los Angeles. My name's Brooks Melchior saying so long. This has been Sports by Brooks.